Hey, I'm some nobody, and before I get to the point today, I want to clear up a very common misconception. Team Fortress 2 is not a hero shooter, it is a class-based shooter. It has more in common with Battlefield than it does with Overwatch. I'm not interested in hearing any arguments to the contrary, we're moving on. If anybody tries to argue with me, a chimp will be deployed. Now, a hero shooter is, in essence, a cross between a MOBA and a shooter. You've got the abilities on cooldowns, the ultimates, and the roles of the MOBA, and then you've got the moment-to-moment gameplay and game modes of a shooter. Unless you've been in a coma since the year 2015, I really don't need to explain what a hero shooter is, because Overwatch and Marvel Rivals both set the world on fire when they first came out. And if you have been in a coma since 2015, you're about to get enough bad news. I don't gotta throw Overwatch on top of that. I mean, you missed peak Fortnite. What the fuck did you wake up for? Instead of going over the history of the hero shooter genre, let me tell you the story that inspired this video. I was in the gym with my editor Dan. This is my editor Dan, he's a pretty cool dude. I'm spotting Dan on bench, he's looking to hit a PR of 61 kilos, which might not sound like much to you, but considering he only weighs about 27, it's pretty impressive. We're sitting there talking after his warm-up, and he asked me, "Hey brother, what's a better game, Overwatch 2 or Marvel Rivals?" And without skipping a beat, without thinking of it for a second, I tell him, "Doesn't matter, Danny boy, Paladins is better than both of them." Then Dan made 61 kilograms his bitch, so everybody take a second to congratulate Dan on his PR in the comments.
But I'm a genetic freak, and I'm not normal!
Paladins was a hero shooter developed by Hi-Rez Studios and is probably best known as Overwatch for broke people, since the game was free to play back when Overwatch was still $40 to $60. It got a good amount of attention early on for people calling it an Overwatch ripoff, despite the fact that Paladins started development before Overwatch. Those rip-off allegations primarily came about because nobody in 2016 realized that Overwatch and Paladins were both stealing ability ideas from League of Legends. But you can't be charged with crimes against League because League doesn't have, nor should it have, rights. Me and my friends first started playing Paladins back in 2017 because of this reputation it got as an Overwatch ripoff. We were all pretty sick of Overwatch, so I suggested we give Paladins a try as a joke, and then within a week we had all bought Founders Packs. After that, I would never be a consistent Overwatch player again. I came back for a few character releases, but considering Paladins in its beta was having characters fly out, Overwatch was never fully getting me back. I will admit, even though I haven't played Overwatch in like 5 years, I still miss Winston sometimes.
I'm gonna get you out of here! I promise you, I'm gonna get you out of there! You don't belong in there!
Even now playing Marvel Rivals, I usually have to think about Paladins to finish. If you've noticed that I regularly take not-so-subtle digs at Marvel Rivals, it's primarily because of Paladins. I've wanted to talk about this game for a while. See, a couple months back, Hi-Rez officially announced that Paladins would never be getting a major update again, so they could completely focus on Smite 2. That's a shame, but it didn't upset me as much as Multiverses getting shut down, because I think Paladins had a good run, all things considered. It lasted almost 10 years, and it took Overwatch going free to play and Marvel Rivals releasing for Hi-Rez to decide that the hero shooter genre just wasn't worth competing in. Which is understandable, but also a shame, because I genuinely do believe the only thing those games have over Paladins is that they're prettier and a bit more polished. Well, that, and if you're not a Founders Pack member like me, you actually have to unlock the characters, but that's more of just a releasing in a different time issue. What's so great about Paladins? What makes it the absolute cream of the crop, in my opinion? Well, I'd say what really sets Paladins apart is the fact that on the scale of MOBA and shooter that hero shooters balance on, Paladins actually leaned closer to the MOBA side, where I'd say most games in the genre lean more on the shooter side. Hi-Rez's most popular game is without a doubt Smite, the second or third biggest game in the MOBA genre. I don't keep my finger on the pulse with MOBAs, so if Smite dropped out of one of those spots, sorry about the misinformation. Several core mechanics of the MOBA genre are included in Paladins that make it a bit more complicated than its contemporaries, but also makes it much more interesting and fun, in my opinion. The mechanic that Paladins is probably best known for is the card system, but before I talk about that, I want to talk about the mechanic that is arguably the most important part of any Paladins match. The second half of putting together a build in Paladins, the item shop.
Lamp oil, rope, bombs, you want it? It's yours, my friend, as long as you have enough rubies.
At the start of a match, every player gets 450 credits. Throughout the match, you get 1 credit every second, and you earn credits by playing the game. And you get paid extra for doing your job. Tanks get more credits for objective time, supports get more credit for healing, damage characters get more credits for dealing damage, and flankers get more credits for getting kills. And finally, if your team caps a point, everybody on the team gets 300 credits. You spend these credits in the item shop in Spawn to buy permanent upgrades for the match. You can get a total of 4 items that can all be upgraded twice. Some items are cheaper than others, meaning you can get more value for less credits, but the most impactful items are going to be the most expensive ones. Used to be you could only get 1 item from each category, but now you can just get whatever, and that's why this country's in the goddamn state it's in. What items you buy are extremely important, whether you need them for your character to operate at max efficiency or to keep the enemy team from doing so. Like a MOBA, but unlike Overwatch and Rivals, you can't switch characters mid-match in Paladins, so there's no counter swapping. If there's a counter to your character on the enemy team, you're gonna have to pick your build and buy your items around that. You can also see what every player in the lobby buys. So you shouldn't be surprised when a character on the enemy team gets their ult faster than normal or survives something that would normally kill them. I'm not gonna go over every item in the game, but let me give you a few examples. The cheapest item on the defense row, Resilience, makes you resistant to crowd control effects. So let's say you're playing a tank that can get royally screwed over by crowd control like Ashe. Ashe's Shoulder Bash, which can be used as an attack, an engagement, or an escape tool, is very easily countered by stuns. And the primary counter for Ashe's ultimate is knockback effects. But with maxed out resilience, stuns last about a quarter of a second and knockback effects don't move you a fucking inch. But it takes 1200 credits to max out resilience. You can't be dropping that just to counter one person on the enemy team. You've got to look at the entire enemy team and ask yourself, is CC gonna fuck me this round? Because instead of dropping 1200 to counter one person for just 750 credits, you could max out Nimble, which increases your movement speed up to 30%. That's an item that's going to help you all match, and if you're playing a flank character like Lex, that extra movement speed will really help you do your job of chasing down and finishing low health targets in the backline. But by rushing Nimble, you weren't able to afford anything from the healing row. Even with your movement speed, you took some damage securing that pick, and the rest of the enemy team turns that pick into a trade. If only you had bought Bloodbath, the item I knew best as Kill to Heal. Bloodbath true heals you for eliminations. I'll explain what a true heal is later, but just one tier of this item heals you for 360, which could be life-saving. It's also a great item if you're playing a support character like Corvus. Corvus can put a mark on a member of his team that heals them for a portion of healing he does to other teammates. Kills and assists are both treated as eliminations, so if anybody you're healing gets a kill, you get healed via Bloodbath. Only issue, nobody on your team can get a kill because there's so many damn shields on the enemy team. That's when a damage character on your team like Shaolin can buy Wrecker to increase his damage to shields by 50% a tier. Ooh, but Wrecker's pretty pricey, so that Shaolin will have to hold off on buying items like Life Rip, Chronos, or Haven to help defend himself from flank characters. The item shop is one of the many mechanics that makes Paladins being 5v5 work. It is an active and reactive element that all 10 players take part in. You can fine-tune your job on the team, make specific matchups more favorable, or cover your team's weaknesses. If your team has one of each role, meaning one damage, one flanker, one tank, one support, you can only double up on one role with that last slot. If you decide to double up on multiple roles, that means there's a job not being done. So if you've got 2 healers and you're a damage character, you can focus on utility and offensive items, but you're gonna need to carry your weight on the damage front. But if you've got 2 tanks and you're the damage, you'll need to rely on healing items more in exchange for having more frontline pressure because the healer has bigger problems. If Paladins was 6v6 and you could have 2 tanks, a damage and a flank, and 2 healers every game, you would lose out on a very interesting macro game. It'd still be there, but without the inherent imbalance that comes from 5v5, it would be a lot simpler. Buying items mid-match is the bread and butter of the MOBA genre, and Paladins does an exceptional job translating it to a genre with actually fun gameplay.
Peter. The horse is here.
Before I get into talking about Paladin's biggest and best mechanics, I want to talk about a few miscellaneous mechanics Paladins has that makes it more enjoyable than any other game in the hero shooter genre to me. The first one being the mount system. See, when you first spawn in, you are automatically put on your mount. Everybody's mount is the same speed by default, and obviously your mount speed is significantly faster than standard movement. If you attack or use any ability, you get dismounted. If you take any damage, you get dismounted. You can't remount until you respawn. This is a universal rollout mechanic, which means no matter what character you're playing as, there is no slow walk to the point after you respawn. And there's no even longer slow walk to the point after the point moves up. This mechanic is also really important because you have to remember there is no swapping to a hypermobile character to get to the point and stall. This also creates an interesting metagame where after winning a team fight, somebody on your team needs to push forward to try and dismount the enemy team without getting picked off. And if you lost the team fight, you have to use your hypermobility and third-person camera to get to the point without being dismounted. But the mount mechanic also has a huge impact at the very start of the round. Every map in Paladin's main mode, Siege, features a 3-lane map design. Obviously, they all have the middle lane where the point is, and those don't really change too much from map to map, but typically the maps will have one lane that's really easy for both teams to access, and another lane that's a bit more out of the way. This style of map design obviously isn't unique to Paladins, but when you add horses into the mix, it means that any character in the game can take any route they want. If you think about most hero shooters, it's really not feasible for a slow lumbering tank with no mobility options to go with their team for the long flank. But Paladins puts every character on equal footing at the start of the round, unless you drop some credits to buy Master Riding and make your mount faster, most underrated item in the game by the way. Which means unique flank plays are not exclusive to characters with good mobility. There have been plenty of matches in Paladins where me and my entire team go down the right lane to get the drop on the enemy team, and the enemy team went down the left lane to get the drop on us, so we just wind up switching sides. It's great. Honestly, if you're a tank player like me, this is one of Paladin's mechanics that'll have you sighing and thinking about the game when you're playing a different hero shooter. And this might just be placebo, but I feel like the mount mechanic also makes your teammates smarter. I don't know what it is about Marvel Rivals players, but there can be a Punisher on his turret, a Hawkeye holding his bow, a Strange to shield them, and both healers to keep them up. No matter how many times I say, hey, let's not go down the damage hallway, let's go down the perfectly unguarded left flank, my teammates are going to continue going down the damage hallway because it's technically the fastest way to get to the point. If I tell my teammates in Paladins to go left, being able to go left fast because of the horse means they'll probably listen. Though that might have something to do with the next miscellaneous mechanic I'm going to talk about, one I'm not going to put too much time into, so we're not going to do a funny transition here, the VGS. VGS stands for Voice Guided System, and it is essentially a much more in-depth version of the standard communication wheel you see in a lot of multiplayer games these days. But you can do a lot more with the VGS than just spam need healing. It's a little complicated at first, but once you start memorizing the input commands, it's actually a pretty efficient way to convey information to your team and organize plays. Personally, I've never enjoyed talking to randoms in these competitive PvP games. Judge me if you want, but I have never wanted to win in a video game bad enough that I'm willing to interact with somebody who wants to win in a video game so bad they're willing to talk on mic. I might be generalizing here, but I feel like if you solo queue into a PvP game with your mic already on and you're not doing a bit or hitting your bong on mic, you're about half an inconvenience away from being the most annoying prick I've ever encountered in my entire life. And the VGS helps me circumvent that. Not fully, of course, because a great part of the VGS, aside from having pretty much everything you would want to say in a competitive game, is the fact that it both puts a message in chat and has your character say a voice line correlating to the command you put in, just like TF2's. And that's pretty cool because it means it's more likely your teammates will actually register the information, but it's also a bit of a shame because it means your annoying teammates can be annoying still. The classic toxicity combo has always been you rock. Cancel that. But you know, that really stopped hitting after they got rid of the default voice pack.
I'm healed!
Next mechanic I want to talk about is one that's so nice Overwatch stole it, passive health regen. Go a few seconds without taking damage or shooting your gun, and you start healing 300 plus 4% of your max health per second. Now obviously Paladins didn't invent the concept, but I'm of the pretty firm opinion that health regen is a much better option for hero shooters than health packs because of Paladins, in a disengaging from a fight or after winning a fight context. You know, as somebody who plays a lot of Thor and Marvel Rivals, I can't in good conscience condemn picking up a health pack mid-fight. If you look at TF2, which isn't a hero shooter but is a game that sets a good example for using health packs, there are about 5 ways of healing your teammates in TF2, 2 of them are efficient and only one of those 2 can actually move. The one that can actually move, the medic, can only heal one person at a time. What I'm getting at is that there are a million scenarios in TF2 where picking up a health pack is more efficient than just running to your healer. But in hero shooters where support characters are significantly stronger than the TF2 medic, there's very few scenarios where running to a health pack is more efficient than running to your healer. Again, in an out-of-combat context. In that context, the only character in Marvel Rivals where a health pack is more efficient than 1 second of Invisible Woman's shield is Spider-Man, which is ultimately why I prefer Paladins and I guess Overwatch 2's healing out of combat. Because the only thing more efficient than running to a health pack or running to a healer is chilling the fuck out. Last one I'm going to talk about before I get to the real stars of the show is the anti-healing mechanic. See, back in the day, Paladins had this item called Cauterize. And what Cauterize did was reduce the healing done to a target after you hit them with your basic weapon for a second and a half. Tier 1 reduced it by 30%, Tier 2 by 55%, and Tier 3 by 80%. Cauterize was an absolute must-buy back when it was still an item, especially when you could only buy one item from each row. If you didn't buy Cauterize, you were going to be accused of throwing, unless you were going up a super shield-heavy team comp, or you were a specific character that needed deft hands to reload faster, like Maldamba or Dredge. Eventually, since Cauterize had a near 100% buy rate, the devs decided to remove it as an item and make it a base mechanic. Some people didn't like this, but personally I welcomed it, because that meant each player actually had 4 item slots to work with instead of having 3 item slots and 1 dedicated to Cauterize. How the mechanic works is, at the start of the game, hitting somebody with your primary fire reduces their healing received by 25% for a second and a half. Every 40 seconds, the effect increases by 5% until it reaches its maximum of 90% around 11 minutes into a match. Remember when I mentioned true healing earlier with Bloodbath? Well, true healing is healing that isn't countered by Cauterize. It's not a very prevalent mechanic, but it is a factor to consider. I like the anti-healing mechanic a lot. That may be surprising to hear right after I said I'm a tank player, but the existence of anti-healing does tanks and supports a lot of favors. First off, it makes both roles a bit more engaging by making supports hold their healing abilities until their tank is clean, and it makes tanks need to play smarter to go a second and a half without taking damage. It also means that healing output can be pretty crazy without being so strong that tanks can just hold forward and heal through insane DPS. You have to remember that Paladins is 5v5 and you won't usually have 2 healers, so the supports need to be able to solo heal. With Cauterize to keep healing output in check, the tanks get to have some serious survivability in their kits, and the supports get to have a ton of capabilities outside of just putting out heals. Something I really don't care for with Marvel Rivals is the design philosophy of its support characters. The entirety of Rivals' balance rests on its supports. If they weren't able to put out such an insane amount of consistent healing so fast, most of them with just their basic attacks, time to kill would be near instant and maybe 2.5 tanks would be viable. What this means is that the game plan for almost every support character in Rivals is to heal bot. A lot of people hear that term and immediately take it negatively. I'm not insulting strategist players with that. I'm not saying strategist is brain dead. I'm saying that by the design of the game, your top priority is always throwing out heals. And there are supports in that game that are designed to be able to do more than just heal, but if the heal gears stop turning for even a second, your tank is getting sent back to spawn. And I said tank instead of tanks because as a tank player, I can promise you I'm the only one on the fucking team. This always be healing design philosophy extends to the ultimates too. The Immortal Circle ult design is highly prevalent, boring as hell, and pretty much every match is decided by how both teams play around them. Even Loki, who should have the most interesting ult in the game because he can technically have any ult in the game he wants, 9 times out of 10 he's going to steal an Immortal Circle ult. This isn't suddenly a Marvel Rivals video. I'm saying all this to say that I find most of Marvel Rivals supports boring to play, but in contrast, I think Paladins has the most fun supports out of any game in the genre. They've all got some form of utility, some type of role they fill in the team, some kind of identity outside of the way they put out healing. Furia has a passive where healing allies increases the fire rate of her gun. Grover's basic attack is an axe throw that does more damage the farther you throw it, making him kind of a sniper. Pip is insanely mobile and is the original Jeff the Landshark, where he's legitimately a better flanker than he is a healer. Rest in peace Jeff, by the way, that rework is ass. When Maldamba reloads, he throws his snake and it stuns enemies you hit with it, giving him an offensive and defensive option. Even the support character that fits the healbot allegations best, Saris, with her auto-aim healing and her shortest cooldown in the game on a healing ability, brings something extra to the table. When Saris hits an enemy with her weapon, she puts soul orb charges on them that she can detonate with one of her other abilities. If she detonates 4 charges on one enemy, she stuns them. On top of that, every charge she detonates gives her 1.5% extra max health and weapon damage until she dies, up to a max of 24%. I can't fucking stand this character. If you play Saris, you better stay out of West Gloucestershire, cause I'm gonna get you. What I'm trying to say is that the support characters are so much more than just healers, and this design philosophy extends to the ultimates too. There are 13 support champions in Paladins, and 6 of them have ults that can heal teammates. Cauterize affects all but one of those ults, and only 2 of those 6 just heal teammates without any other functions. The one that Cauterize doesn't affect is Lilith's, which gives her teammates 30% true lifesteal and also buffs her mobility for its duration. The 2 that just heal without any other functions are Ying and Grover. Grover heals in a radius around him and Ying heals her team map-wide for 8 seconds, but both of these characters have relatively low, mostly passive healing as their primary methods of healing, so these ultimates balance that out. The other 3 support ults that heal are Grock's, Corvus's, and Ray's. Grock's ultimate heals allies and damages enemies, but it's for a very low amount. The primary function of it is that it speeds up teammates and slows down the enemies he hits. It isn't about keeping your allies alive, it's about helping them secure kills. Corvus puts out a circle that does heal teammates a percentage of their max health over time, but more importantly, it damages enemies a percentage of their max health over time. It's an area denial tool more than it's a healing tool. Ray's ultimate makes her and the teammate she links to invincible for 2 seconds and then heals them both 75% of their max health. Sure, the healing is nice, but that's a parry above all else. The other 7 support ults all serve non-healing functions. Furia buffs her team's damage and movement speed. Io and Saris both get displacement ults that let them either push enemies away or group them together. Maldamba throws out a bomb that makes the enemies run away in fear. Pip throws out a polymorph potion that turns anybody it hits into a defenseless chicken. Moji turns an enemy into a cookie and can instantly kill them by colliding with them and eating them. And Genos?
3, 2, 1. Step into the light. Double kill. That's 5 in a row. Triple kill.
You should be proud.
Quadra kill.
Okay.
That's 7 in a row.
Okay.
Penta kill.
I love playing support in Paladins. It's intense and engaging. A lot of games can make playing support feel like you're just enabling other people to have fun, but Paladin supports are entirely capable of being part of the fun because they can do so much without being overpowered, all thanks to Cauterize. If you're a support main in Marvel Rivals, be careful if you decide to try out Paladins, because once you go back to Cloak and Dagger, they'll be able to tell the spark just isn't there anymore. Alright, I think I danced around enough. Let's jump to part 1 of the big fucking deal about this game. The artist formerly known as Legendary Cards talent.
A little bit about Cody. Cody is blind and autistic.
The first thing you do when you load into a match of paladins is pick your talent, one of 3 major alterations to your character's kit that changes your playstyle in a big way. For most characters, it buffs a specific ability to make it the center of your game plan, but for some it creates entirely new effects. I heard Overwatch stole these 2 for the stadium mode, but I'm not entirely informed on that. Talents are awesome. Some of them aren't too game-changing on their own, but even the simple ones mean each character is capable of being 3 different characters. That means there really is no such thing as a hard counter character-wise in this game. If I want to play as Drogos, Paladin's take on the rocket launcher character, one of his talents greatly increases his aerial mobility. A Drogos with this talent can be an absolute menace, raining hellfire down on the enemy team constantly. In any other hero shooter, this would be all the character can be, and he'd be absolutely busted until somebody switches to a hit scan character and completely shuts down every attempt at him playing the game. But in Paladins, if I pick Drogos into multiple hit scan characters, I have options. I can pick the talent that makes direct hits do more damage and just play Drogos closer to the ground. Sure, I'm a bit more vulnerable to a flanker, but now I've beat the shit out of every other poke character. Though just because you can't be hard countered by a character, that doesn't mean you can't be hard countered. Just like items, you can see what talent every player in the lobby chooses, and that's where game knowledge really comes into play. You need to be able to recognize a majority of the talents in the game to be good at Paladins because, like I just said, every character can technically be 3 different characters. For an example of what I mean by that, if you look at this match where I picked Inara, who is a really good tank but who's slow and has no mobility in her base kit, the enemy team has a Tyra. Tyra has an ability that leaves behind a pool of fire that does 9% of your max health as damage in 0.6 seconds. That's already a very dangerous ability for a tank, but her talent Burn Monster increases that to about 12% and adds a 60% anti-healing effect to the firebomb. That's really bad for a tank whose only option if they get caught in it is to slowly walk out of it. And fun fact, this talent used to add a cripple to the firebomb, so even tanks with movement abilities had to just slowly walk out of it. It was the most annoying shit that was ever in the game. So at the start of the round, I sit here looking at the scoreboard, waiting to see if the Tyra will pick Burn Monster, and once she does, I swap to Inara's talent Tremors, which gives her 2 charges of her wall ability. Now I have a quick way to get out of the fire without wasting my shield option. To demonstrate the range of the talent system, I'm going to go over the 3 talents of a support character I've already briefly mentioned, Ying. Here's Ying's bare ass. You see that? All the people that were using this video as background noise just turned to look the second they heard there'd be ass. We all saw you, buddy. We got you dead to rights. You got 1 minute to confess your sin in the comments or else a chimp will be deployed to your location. To the perverts in the crowd, you'll be happy to know that there's quite a few characters I could have used for that joke, but I chose Ying because I think her talents are some of the best examples of the mechanic. Ying's kit is pretty basic by default. She puts out clones that automatically heal whatever teammate is the most hurt within their range. She can use Shatter to have these clones chase after enemies and explode as a burst damage option. Or she can use Dimensional Link to teleport the clones she has out or clones that recently died as a way to escape danger. Ying's default talent is Focusing Lens, and it turns her into an absolute menace. See, each fire of Ying's weapon does 5 instances of 90 damage for a total of 450 damage, and Focusing Lens adds an extra 200 damage on top of that if you hit all 5. That's 650 damage every 0.5 seconds for a total of 1300 damage a second. In practice, that means Damage Ying can kill a 2200 health champion in 4 shots instead of 5. It is not uncommon for a Ying running this talent to put up damage numbers comparable to a damaged champion. Ying's second talent, Life Exchange, changes Shatter into a beam you fire that heals your teammates, giving Ying an active healing ability outside of her ultimate and burst healing, but at the expense of your ability to defend yourself. With Life Exchange, Shatter won't detonate your clones anymore, meaning you're giving up your burst damage option to become a more effective healer. I really like that design. Most supports choose between talents that make them a stronger healer or increase their damage capabilities, but not too many have to give up one for the other. Ying's final talent is actually my personal favorite, but it was, and probably still is, the most looked down upon talent in the entire game. Focusing Lens may incentivize Ying to deal damage, but it still encourages her to place her clones in smart places so the clones can heal her team and her. But Resonance is all about using your clones as weapons of war. It increases the explosion radius of Shatter, increases the damage of the explosion by 50, and makes your clones move faster when you activate Shatter. But the big thing about Resonance, and the main reason it's so hated, is that it actively discourages Ying from keeping her clones alive, because now when they get killed by enemies or expire, they explode as if you had activated Shatter. Now hypothetically, you could just play normally, have your clones heal, let that explosion be a deterrent to killing them, or just have it be passive damage when they naturally expire. Or, you could put your clones in extremely stupid positions so they die quick, drop them right in front of you to use as a human shield in 1v1s, and do like no healing but deal insane burst damage. Your team is not going to appreciate you choosing this talent, they may even get upset about it, but it is fun. That's basically talents in a nutshell. They're pretty awesome, but like I said earlier, they're only half of the equation. Time to talk about part 2 of the big fucking deal about paladins, loadouts.
Draw your last pathetic card, Yugi.
My grandpa's deck has no cards, Kaiba.
Now you may want to brace yourself for this next part, because if you were stunned by me saying talents mean characters can technically be 3 different characters, loadouts mean that every character can technically be about 400,000 different characters. Now that's just an estimation, and probably an inaccurate one, but the loadout system does mean that every single character is highly customizable. To teach you about it, I'm going to use the simplest character in the game, Paladin's take on the Call of Duty man, Victor. Victor's 3 abilities are aim down sights, sprint, and throw a grenade. I actually think Victor is the best take on the Call of Duty man archetype in the hero shooter genre, simply because of how important cooking that grenade is to his game plan. How loadouts work is that every character has 5 card slots and 16 cards to choose from. You have 4 cards for each ability and 4 basic cards that affect the entire character instead of one specific ability. Once you've selected your 5 cards, you will have 10 points to distribute across them. You have a total of 15 points to use, but you can't leave a card slot empty, and just equipping the card automatically uses 1 point. You use these points to level the cards up, increase the power of their effect up to a max level of 5. This is why I guesstimated 400,000 earlier, because this is a countless number of possibilities available to you. I've said it before, but I'll say it again, I absolutely love putting builds together. I've got about 1,200 hours in Paladins, and I'd bet a not insignificant amount of that time was spent in these card menus just putting loadouts together. This is a level of character depth that I don't think any other hero shooter will ever reach. Because this system, when combined with the talent system, means that even a mechanically simple character like Victor can be so many different things. Like this build, where Victor gets a bigger magazine and pretty much every action he takes gives him ammo back, including getting eliminations. I'll run this with Victor's cardio talent, which heals him passively while he's sprinting, meaning I never have to stop to heal and I never have to stop to reload, so I become a hyper-aggressive character. Or I could go all in with this grenade-focused build that includes a cooldown reset and a reduced cooking timer. You can run this with his shrapnel talent, which increases the radius of his grenade by 40% and increases its damage by 150 up to 900, and Victor can put out 1800 damage to an entire team really fast. If you want to play Victor a bit more conservatively and you don't want to play as a hyper-aggressive run-and gunner or a mid-range grenadier, you can sit back and laser beam people with this build that completely removes recoil while you're aiming down sights. You see a lot of people run this with the burst fire talent, which completely changes Victor's damage numbers and the way his gun fires to turn him into a long-range damage dealer. And that's just 3 examples of how you can use talents and loadouts to completely transform the most simple character in the game. And those are just 3 possibilities. You could combine Flak Jacket and Scramble with the cardio talent to make Victor an extremely hard to kill nuisance. You could combine the Shrapnel talent with On the Move and Reflexes to do a burst of 900 damage to your enemy and then walk them down with the Assault Rifle. You could use Burst Mode with Firing Stance and Hit and Run to be moving around the map permanently ADS'd. Again, this is just the simplest character in a roster of 59 playable characters. Victor doesn't have any passives to worry about, and he only has one cooldown to manage, so even though he is the shallowest character, he's still pretty deep. That's kind of what makes the characters of Paladins its strongest suit. Their complexity really doesn't come from their basic kits. Outside of maybe one or two exceptions, I'd say every character in Paladins is pretty easy to understand. Obviously, just like any other game in this genre, there are characters with higher skill floors and higher skill ceilings than others, but if you took away talents and loadouts and the item shop, took away all that BAM non-factor, the characters would be very basic. They'd be very bare bones. And that's by design so that each character can be as customizable as they are. The characters that already have some depth get deeper, and the characters that are pretty shallow get deep. With that, I think I've said everything I want to say about the gameplay of Paladins, and I hope I made it sound as good as I think it is. But to end off the video, I want to talk about a few of my favorite characters in the game, starting with the only Grock I would ever trust. My script here says he's my favorite support champion in the game. Grock, is this true?
Yes!
Thanks, Grock. While I got you here, should I get drunk and gamble Dan's salary away tonight?
Yes!
Thanks, Grock. Who needs a racist AI when you got the lightning shaman of the Red River Orc tribe?
I am fast. I am somewhere between a snake and a mongoose.
As previously mentioned, Grock is my favorite support champion in Paladins, and he's actually one of my most played characters. Grock is an interesting beast because his primary method of healing is putting down totems that heal in a radius around them. He's one of two supports that has a talent that makes his primary fire heal, but personally I never cared for it. I first started playing Grock well before they gave him all the buffs he has in modern day Paladins. For instance, when I started playing Grock, he couldn't place his totems at a range, he could only drop them at his feet. Now obviously that comes with the downside of not being able to heal your team unless they're right next to you, but it made for a very interesting type of healer play style where Grock's role was, and to an extent still is, to be on the point fighting with the tank. Grock is actually a fairly competent brawler. His primary fire does more damage the longer you hold it on an enemy, and his alternate fire sends out a shock pulse that bounces between enemies to damage potentially a whole team. And then you come in with Grock's final ability, Ghost Walk, which makes him ethereal for 2 seconds. It's not much of an escape tool by default, but you can build it to be an escape tool. What Ghost Walk is by default is a reset. As long as you make sure you have a totem down before you activate Ghost Walk, since Ghost Walk will clear all status effects, meaning it clears the anti-healing mechanic, you instantly get put back to full health. So Grock effectively has tank levels of max health because you technically gotta kill him twice. Ghost Walk also has a card attached to it that reduces the cooldown of your healing totem, and that is just fucking fantastic, especially now. Gale was really good back when Grock had 1 totem, but now he has 2 by default, 3 with a talent. And not too long ago, they made a change where these cooldowns no longer happened one after the other. They were all happening at the same time, so you could take time off of all 3 cooldowns if you put out all 3 totems. And multiple totems do stack their healing, so it's not unreasonable that you're putting a lot out at the same time. And you really can't talk about Grock without talking about his damage talent, Maelstrom. It increases the damage of your primary fire, which is whatever, who cares, but more importantly, it resets the cooldown of your alternate fire. So if the enemy team is grouped up, you're just constantly bouncing projectiles between all of them and beating the shit out the whole team at the same time. You know, Grock as a whole is a design that really only works in Paladins, because if you put a character like this in any other hero shooter, a support that can double as a frontline brawler, they're either going to be ass or they're going to ruin the game. Listen, I was paying attention to Overwatch long enough to know about Brigitte's Reign of Terror when she first released, but that's just what I was talking about earlier. The existence of the anti-heal mechanic means Paladins gets to have really fun and unique support designs. Moving away from my favorite support champion and moving to my favorite frontline or tank champion, it's a tough one, because I'm a tank player. I like pretty much every tank in Paladins, but I can only pick one as my favorite, so I want to do a few honorable mentions real quick. You got Atlas, who in lore is basically future Trunks coming back to the past to stop an apocalyptic future. His whole kit is centered around time. Obviously he can rewind himself through time, which isn't a few different hero shooters, but he's the only time-based character I know of that can rewind enemies through time. Then you got Yagharoth, the creature that causes the apocalyptic future Atlas came back to stop. She's the biggest tank in the game with the highest natural health pool, and she's so big that she's the only character in the game that doesn't get a mount. Instead, she can swap between a hyper-mobile Sonic the Hedgehog spin dash stance and a planted stance where she can't move but she gets a base 30% damage reduction. The design process behind this character was to make a playable raid boss, and while she's substantially weaker than she was on launch, she's still pretty cool. Then you got Ash, the War Machine, a tank that's all about bullying her enemies with tons of crowd control and knockback. Then you got Terminus, who's the only melee champion in the game and is an absolute fucking monster. He's also got some of the coolest lore in the game. Terminus used to be a Rockman guardian with his Rock Woman wife Inara until he was killed by Ash. After that, his body was retrieved by the magistrate and he was unwillingly resurrected into an unstoppable war machine under their control. He's lost his mind after being resurrected so many times, but there's still some hints at the guy he used to be, like when he uses his ultimate, which he can only use after he dies.
Please, let me die. No! No!
There are a lot of really cool tanks and paladins, but if I'm picking my favorite, there's really only one answer. The man that is probably the biggest cause of paladins getting the Overwatch ripoff allegations back in the day, even though there is prototype footage of this character that originated in like 2012. The tank that is the only gay character in Paladins, but also somehow the only character that flirts with women, Fernando.
Would you like to see my butt tattoo?
On the surface, Fernando is a lot like Reinhardt. He puts up a shield, he shoots a fireball, he charges at you. He used to be less like Reinhardt, where his shield had a limited duration, you could hold it out, and it had a cooldown. And I actually preferred that old design, but whatever. Even now that you can bring the shield up whenever you want, you don't want to just walk around with the shield out. You need to be smart with your shield because one damage champion choosing Wrecker will effectively disable the ability. What I like about Fernando really isn't found in his base kit, it's found in his cards. A lot of tanks have a card that let them reduce their active cooldowns after getting an elimination, but Fernando is one of the best users of it because he has other cards that also reduce those cooldowns. Like he has cards that make both his fireball and his shield taking damage reduce the cooldown on his charge ability, which is important because there are cards that make your charge ability proc very useful effects. You can give yourself a bubble shield or movement speed off of using your charge, and even outside of those two effects, Fernando is a very slow character by default, so just having the charge up to escape danger more often is useful. You can also give yourself movement speed off your fireball, which makes Fernando an absolute terrorist for an enemy backline. As an honorable and valiant knight, Fernando really shines when he's beating up peasant farmers as the legendary Flank Nando. Fernando was very much born to off-tank, forced to main tank. That's pretty much all I got to say about Fernando. If I'm being honest, I like past incarnations of the character a bit more than the modern version, but he's done a lot of good work for me. Moving on to my favorite flank champion in Paladins, and there's really only one option.
Do you have a buck? I could show you a wild time.
Buck is something of an oddity in the flank category because most of them are small, squishy, highly mobile. Characters like Talus who have low health pools but they hit like a fucking truck and they get out of sticky situations extremely well. Buck is the exact opposite. He is massive. He has 2300 health, which is more than most damage champions, and he has a ton of sustain in his kit. He has one movement ability, but outside of that he has very poor mobility. And to top it all off, he is incredibly loud. When he uses that one movement ability, a literal train whistle goes off. It should be no surprise that originally Buck was a tank. Back before Paladins went into open beta, he was reworked into being a flank character. I can't actually find the reason why, but if you think about it, Buck doesn't actually stand out that much from the rest of the flanks. The only real difference between flank characters and damage characters is the way they deal their damage. Flank characters deal bursts of high damage, and damage characters do consistent high damage. Meant to be a very simple triangle where flanks excel at killing damage dealers excel at killing tanks, and flanks can't really do too much to tanks. And I don't know if any flank character embodies that philosophy better than the former tank. Buck's shotgun fires slow, reloads slow, and only has 6 ammo. Just in terms of pure damage output versus survivability, most tanks are going to beat Buck in a straight up fight, but Buck is an absolute menace to anybody smaller than him. I'd go as far to say he is a bully, especially to the other flankers, and especially to the ones that only have 1900 health. Because 2 of Buck's 3 talents give him the ability to 2-shot a 1900 health champion, whether that be from the bonus damage of Ensnare or landing on them with Bounce House and then shooting them twice. I actually started playing Buck back in the day because of a dude named Raven Trick on YouTube and his montages. Listen, in my prime, I was pretty good at Buck, alright? I got a little nasty with Buck, but I never even came close to how good Raven Trick is. Raven Trick is the Buck guy, and nothing I can say about the character will make him sound as good as Raven will make him look. Buck is another character with one of those reset cooldowns on elimination cards, and this is the full potential of that type of card. Alright, now I saved my favorite damage champion for last, specifically because this was my first main in Paladins. And for what it's worth, I find that most people that start playing Paladins naturally gravitate towards this character at the start. I'd go as far to say he may be the most iconic character from Paladins.
I've got a long fuse, but my temper's explosive.
Right off the bat, from a purely visual standpoint, Bomb King may just be the best character design in Paladins. He's a walking, talking, living bomb. All of his weapons and abilities are also living bombs, and he's got a big cartoony voice. You can't beat this. It's the best character design in the game, and he didn't even have to take his ass out, Ying. And then from a gameplay perspective, I'd say Bomb King is still one of the most fun damage characters in the game. Bomb King is a very high-risk, high-reward champion. He's all about throwing out these sticky bombs and then detonating them, but these sticky bombs come out slow and they fall in an arc, so they don't really work great over range. Ideally, you stick the bombs to the enemy before you detonate them to do the max damage of 850. If that don't work, you gotta detonate it when it flies past them to get some of the damage. The bomb's damage starts falling off after 1.5 units, which basically means if you don't stick it to them, you're not getting the max damage. But if you can stay calm in a fight and consistently stick bombs to enemies or just get your detonate timings down packed, you can slap the shit out of pretty much every character in the game as Bomb King, especially if you're running his talent Chain Reaction, which increases the damage of each bomb you stick on somebody after the first one by 30%. Which means if you stick 2 bombs on an enemy, you are instantly deleting a 1900 health character, and any other damage, flank, or support character in the game is going to be put on death's door. Chain Reaction also lets you delete tanks. That might seem busted, but you have to remember you gotta land like 4 bombs on a tank without them putting their shield up or doing something to become CC immune, and the bombs only last 2 seconds. It's strong, but it's not free, and that's kind of the entirety of Bomb King's character. I used to be a demon with Bomb King, but I was getting my ass kicked trying to record footage for him. But once you really start to get in the flow with Bomb King, he is so fun. That's kind of how I felt all around playing the game again to record this footage. Obviously, I lost a lot of my skills, gave most of them away to charity, but I slid right back in like a comfortable pair of pants. And I was just immediately having a blast, having a good time. Win or lose, I was having some intense matches. Paladins is a game with a very special place in my heart, and I just wanted to talk about it while I still had the chance. iRez has said that even though the game isn't getting any more major updates, they're going to keep the servers up, but you know how these things go sometimes. For what it's worth, queue times weren't bad at all. I'd find matches for Siege and the Wave Defense mode fairly quickly. If you've never played Paladins but you like hero shooters, I'd really recommend you check Paladins out. It's still free and it's still a really good game. I'd be all over a Paladins too, man. I know that ain't likely, but who knows. Whether you decide to actually check out Paladins or not, I hope I made it sound cool, and I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about it. Now check this out.